Former National Security Advisor John Bolton recently gave a private speech to some wealthy individuals. It was Morgan Stanley's global investment event in Miami. And during this event, apparently he had some negative things to say about Donald Trump, and he made it clear that he believes all of Donald Trump's foreign policy decisions are based on his self-interests. Now that's unsurprising to us because we talk about that all the time, but what exactly did Bolton say? Well, according to NBC News, which broke the story, Bolton derided President Donald Trump's daughter and son-in-law during a private speech last week and suggested his former boss's approach to US policy on Turkey is motivated by personal or financial interests. And that's according to several people who were present for the remarks. And then they went and told NBC News about it. Noting the broad bipartisan support in Congress to sanction Turkey after President Erdogan purchased a Russian missile defense system, Bolton said Trump's resistance to the move was unreasonable for people present for his speech said. So you have Erdogan basically going against US sanctions on Russia, buying this missile system, right? And everyone, there's bipartisan support to sanction Turkey over it, and Trump is like, no, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, look, so here, me being a Turkish American is slightly irrelevant because I can tell you, folks following Turkish politics were a bit stunned that they weren't sanctioned. It's a big breach of NATO. Turkey's the second largest army in NATO. For them to buy a Russian missile defense system, it might actually implicate some of our national security interests in terms of, now I don't know the details and I'm not a tech guy in this respect, but I've heard that it's concerning because of how do you integrate the Russian stuff with the American military stuff, and would that allow the Russians to learn something about our defense systems and our technology? So it was, I give you all that as context for not doing anything about that was stunning. Bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats think, how did you let Turkey do that? Wait till they got a load of what he let them do later, right? So, and Bolton, I mean, he's clearly saying here, I think it's his personal and business relationship.
So let's talk about the business relationship that Donald Trump has with Turkey, because that is relevant. Now look, also caveat to this entire story. We know that John Bolton is a warmonger. We know that some of his disagreements with Donald Trump had to do with the fact that Trump didn't engage in even more war abroad, even though Trump has expanded Obama's drone policies. He has continued in the Saudi-led demise of the Yemenis. Trump's foreign policy has been disgusting and terrible, but not disgusting and terrible enough for Bolton. However, Bolton does raise some serious concerns when it comes to Trump's conflicts of interest. So, the Trump Organization has a property in Istanbul, and the president's daughter Ivanka Trump attended the opening with Erdogan back in 2012. Though it's a leasing agreement for use of the Trump name, Trump himself said in a 2015 interview that the arrangement presented, quote, a little conflict of interest should he be elected.
See, he can't help himself. He just blurts out things, even though they're terribly damaging to him. So guys, if the leasing agreement, if it sounds complicated, it isn't, and it's actually very problematic. Why? If he's not involved in politics, not at all problematic. Donald Trump sucks at building buildings. That's why he went bankrupt 6 times running his own companies. He is like legendarily incompetent in real estate. Everybody in New York, in the banks that would lend loans, I mean, they're super happy to lend loans to people that they go, you know how New York works. Everybody's, it's not like they think he's a populist or anything. They're like, yo, man, if you make a dime for us, we'll give you anything you want. But everybody laughs at Donald Trump. He's a laughing stock. He's never made any money in any of his deals. He constantly goes bankrupt. He constantly screws over his creditors, right? So what wound up happening is, but to be fair to Trump, he loves the spotlight, he runs straight to it, and as it turns out, being a narcissist helps you with marketing because he's like Trump, right? So it became synonymous with wealth, even though it shouldn't have been, but it doesn't matter, that it worked. So I'm being fair to Trump, the marketing worked. So what people do is they go, no, I don't want you to run the building, are you nuts? I don't want it to go bankrupt in day 2. But I will give you money for your name, and I'll call it Trump Tower, and I'll pay you, and sometimes up to $20 million just for your name. Now, it's a great deal if you can get it, right? Because then he doesn't have to do anything, he takes no risk, and he just gets a flat out check for his name. So that's why a lot of the things that you see that are called Trump doesn't have anything to do with. He just gets paid to put his name on it. Now that's a good deal, and that's the only good thing he's ever done in business. Okay, but why is it relevant here? Because it means somebody just writes you a check. They could write it for $1 million, they could write it for $5 million, they could write it for $20 million. And so if you're doing a straight up business, well, you're gonna negotiate and you're gonna get to a fair market price. But if there's governments involved and there are other interests involved, for example, taking territory in another country, for example, giant missile defense systems, for example, billions of dollars in trade agreements, then paying Trump a little bit more for that leasing agreement on his name is nothing at all. And so here is one of his top advisors, a former national security advisor, saying, I think he's doing it for the money. And so, for God's sake, Democrats, will you look into his business interests? I mean, Jesus Christ, what is wrong with you? When it comes to Russia and when it comes to Turkey, for God's sake, look into his business interests. It's so obvious, he tells you all the time, all I care about is the money, 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 money. And the Democrats are like, should we follow the money? Nah, let's not do that.
Same with Saudi Arabia. I mean, there are so many examples of conflicts of interest informing his decisions, foreign policy decisions, and they just won't investigate that. And I find it incredibly strange, so.
And last thing now about Russia, Bolton said, this is quoting the New York Times, NBC News. Bolton said, regardless of how much evidence is provided to Trump that Russia interfered in the 2016 election, the president refuses to take any action. So there's a guy from the inside, not a guy on the internet who likes to be, likes to contradict people, but a guy on the inside going, hey, every one of his advisors is saying, take action against Turkey, take action against Russia. All Republicans and Democrats agree, and he's like, nope.
More importantly, his advisors agree.
Yeah, and they're like, hey, give us a reason. Well, I'm not gonna give you a reason. And so here's his national security advisor saying, I think it's the money. I think it's his personal business interests that he cares about. You might wanna look into it in the middle of impeachment. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.